The text arrived around noon on a Tuesday, slipping into my screen between lines of code like a shadow I didn't invite. Spending the week at Dad's, he's not feeling well. Don't worry, just need some company and help around the house. At first glance, there was nothing wrong with it. Concerned daughter. Sudden change of plans. Life happens, but the tone felt strangely detached, as if she were passing out a weather update instead of something personal. Zoe always called when something involved her family, always. But this time she texted, and the message felt almost rehearsed. I typed back, send him my best. Hope he feels better soon, and forced myself to resume working. The code on my screen blurred, my senses buzzing with that quiet alarm your brain triggers when your heart refuses to accept something is wrong. That evening I called her, expecting the gentle warmth in her voice, the way she always said my name before anything else. But the call rang until it died. Then my text, simple, caring, sat unanswered like an abandoned thought. The next morning, her silence began to settle over me like the weight of an unfinished sentence. Zoe never went this long without checking in. Even when she was busy, she'd send a voice note or a quick, I'm okay. This time there was nothing. Not even an emoji, not even the illusion of closeness. 2 days later, she finally replied, busy day. Sorry I haven't called. Dad's asleep most of the time. Short, dry, strangely formal. There was no warmth, no spark, no sense that she missed me at all. The Zoe I knew always spoke in emotions. Even her apologies had flavor. This felt like it was copied from somewhere else. By Friday, the unease wasn't a feeling anymore. It was a presence sitting beside me, breathing against my neck, whispering doubts I didn't want to hear. I called her mom for reassurance. She answered immediately. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual, is Zoe doing okay? She said she's spending the week at her dad's. A soft pause. Confusion. Then her mom spoke. She's at work. My grip tightened on the phone. At work? Of course. She hasn't visited her father in weeks. It felt like the floor dipped beneath me. The room went quiet, as if even the air needed a moment to understand what had just happened. The lie wasn't small. It wasn't accidental. It was deliberate, entirely manufactured. I hung up politely, though I barely remembered doing it. I sat there, staring at nothing, listening to the echo of her mother's voice repeating in my head. She hasn't visited him in weeks. Why would she lie? Why create an entire story? I didn't confront her. Not yet. Not when I had no idea what I was dealing with. I needed clarity, and clarity rarely comes from confrontation. It comes from truth. Saturday afternoon, I drove to her apartment. Her car was parked outside. The curtains were drawn like a secret she didn't want sunlight to reach. I climbed the stairs slowly, my heart tightening the higher I went. When I reached her door, I raised a hand to knock, and then froze. Laughter, a man's laugh, deep, relaxed, comfortable. Then hers followed, soft, warm, the exact sound she used to make with me. A sound that should have felt like home, but now felt like a knife twisting into my ribs. I didn't knock. I didn't call her name. I didn't burst inside demanding answers. My chest felt like it was collapsing inward, and if I stayed another second, I knew something in me would break. I walked back to my car on legs that didn't feel like mine, sat down, stared at the steering wheel for 20 long, empty minutes. Her text arrived then, perfectly timed to sting. Sorry, another long day. How are you? There it was. The lie. The performance. The script she'd written for me while living a different story behind a closed door. I didn't reply. The next morning, I packed every one of her things from my place, folded them gently, and set them neatly outside her door with a note. I hope your dad feels better. I didn't add anger. I didn't add questions. I didn't add pain. Some truths don't need a confrontation. Some betrayals don't shout. They whisper. And that whisper is enough to end everything. But I didn't know then. The whisper was only the first crack. The real collapse was still coming. The next few days felt like living underwater. Sound traveled strangely. Thoughts drifted heavy and slow. Every time I checked my phone, the knot in my stomach tightened, expecting Zoe to call, to explain, to deny everything. She didn't. Instead, she sent small hollow messages. Hope you're having a good day. Work's been busy. Miss you. Miss you. The audacity of those words made my hands shake. But I didn't respond. I wasn't ready. The image of that closed door, that laughter, that quiet betrayal, it stayed with me like a bruise someone kept pressing. By Wednesday, a strange numbness settled over me. The kind that appears when the truth is too large to hold all at once. I replayed everything, her recent distance, the sudden excuses, the subtle shifts in her tone, the way she'd started turning her phone face down on the table. Signs I had dismissed. Signs I didn't want to interpret truthfully. I needed to see the world she'd chosen instead of me. Not to punish her, but to understand. That afternoon I drove past her workplace. I told myself it was only to verify she was actually there. But deep down, I wanted to see whether her lies extended beyond Saturday night. Her car was in the parking lot. Lights glowed from her floor's windows. I parked across the street, hidden in the shade of a tree. Minutes passed. Then movement caught my eye. Zoe and him. The man whose laugh had cut through me days earlier. They walked side by side, close too close. Not touching, not obviously involved, but bodies always leaning slightly toward each other. Comfortable. Familiar in a way that wasn't new. She nudged his shoulder. He laughed. She laughed. Then she brushed something off his sleeve, a small intimate gesture she'd once done to me. The slow burn of betrayal spread through my chest, hotter than rage, colder than grief. It wasn't the cheating that hit hardest. It was the performance, the double life. The way she crafted stories for me while building moments with him. I watched her leave the building. She didn't look tired. She didn't look upset. She didn't look like someone caring for a sick father. She looked alive, energized, like she'd found something or someone she didn't want to lose. But she still texted me that night. Rough day. Going to bed early, I didn't reply, but I didn't block her. Something in me needed the messages, not for comfort, but as evidence. Every lie she sent was another thread in the web she'd woven around us. By Friday, the slow-burning realization became impossible to deny. Zoe wasn't hiding a mistake. She was maintaining a routine. This wasn't new. This wasn't accidental. This was a pattern carefully curated to keep me docile, hopeful, blind. And then, one quiet thought surfaced, a thought that changed everything. If she lied about her father, what else had she lied about? The whisper of betrayal had grown teeth. And part of me, the part that still felt wounded, wanted answers, real answers. Not the ones she crafted. The truth she never intended for me to find. The next morning felt wrong before I even opened my eyes. The house was too quiet. Not peaceful, empty. A kind of silence that doesn't settle. It waits. I sat up slowly, listening. No footsteps. No movement. Nothing from her side of the bed except sheets still slightly warm, like she left minutes ago. But her phone. Her phone was still on the dresser. That wasn't normal. She never went anywhere without it. I reached for it, then froze. I don't check people's phones. I never have. That's not who I am. But when trust starts to feel like a loaded gun pointed at your chest, you start breaking your own rules without realizing it. The screen lit up the second I touched it. One new notification, a name I didn't recognize. Drive safe, just that. 2 words. Too simple. Too familiar. My stomach tightened without permission. I opened the message thread, expecting maybe a coworker, but the conversation wasn't work-related at all. Short replies, sparse, but intimate in their timing. Every message was from him, nothing from her, but she had read every single one. And the timestamps. The timestamps were what made my hands go cold. They lined up perfectly with the nights she said she was too tired to talk. The evenings she came home late, tense, saying she just wanted to sleep. The morning she woke before dawn and whispered on the phone in the kitchen, thinking I couldn't hear. It wasn't proof, not really, nothing explicit, no confessions, no affection spelled out. But sometimes the absence of words is louder than the words themselves. My heart started beating in this slow, heavy pattern, not panic. Dread, the kind your body recognizes before your mind does. Then another message came in. You made it home? Before I could think, my thumb tapped the thread open. I don't know what I expected. A clue, a mistake, something careless. But instead I saw something worse. A photo, not inappropriate, not romantic, just a picture of the passenger seat of a car. Her favorite coffee cup in the coup folder, and a timestamp from 2 nights ago. 2 nights ago, she told me she stayed late at work. That she grabbed a sandwich on the way home. That she didn't want to talk about her day because it was one of those days. 2 nights ago. She wasn't at work at all. I set the phone down carefully, like it was something fragile, like it might burn me if I held it too long. I wasn't angry, not yet. Anger is simple, sharp, fast. This was slow. Heavy. It filled my lungs until breathing felt like a skill I had to relearn. I walked to the window and looked at the street outside. The same street where nothing ever seemed to happen. The mailbox, the neighbors' trimmed hedges, the same dog barking at the same cars every morning. Everything looked normal. But the moment I looked back at her phone, I realized something. Normal was gone. And I didn't know when it left. A car door slammed outside. Her car. She was home. And I was still standing there, shaking, holding the truth like a match I wasn't ready to strike. I stepped back from the dresser as the front door opened. Her footsteps moved through the hallway. Slow, dragging, tired, but not tired from work. Tired from pretending. When she walked into the bedroom, she froze the moment she saw where I was standing. Her eyes flicked, just for a second, to the phone on the dresser. Not fear, not guilt, just awareness. And in that moment, I understood something I hadn't wanted to understand, whatever she was hiding. She thought she was hiding it well. And the part that scared me most wasn't the suspicion. It was how calm she looked. Like she wasn't afraid of losing me. Like she wasn't afraid at all. That evening, I walked through the house like I was learning it for the first time. Every picture frame looked staged. Every memory felt edited. Even the air felt heavier, like the walls were holding their breath for me. She cooked dinner like nothing happened, stirred the pot, set the table, asked about my day with this soft, distant smile that used to feel warm, but now felt like a mask stretched too tight. I answered her calmly, normally, maybe even too normally. The truth is, I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. Confrontation gives you answers, but not always the right ones. I needed the truth, not a reaction. After dinner, she said she had a quick errand to run at 8:40 p.m. on a Wednesday. She grabbed her keys, her purse, but not her phone. The same phone still sitting on the dresser. That was the moment something clicked. If she wasn't worried about leaving her phone behind, she wasn't worried about what I'd find. Either she had nothing to hide, or she had already hidden everything that mattered. I waited until I heard her car pull away before I moved. Not rushing, deliberate, steady steps. Like I'd planned this even though I hadn't. Her phone unlocked on the first try. No new messages, no missed calls. Just the same thread. The same silence. But silence leaves trails. I checked the photos, nothing. I checked the email, clean. I checked her notes app, empty. Too empty. Nobody keeps 0 notes. Not someone like her. Not someone who writes lists for lists. Then something strange. A folder inside her photo gallery labeled with a date 6 months ago. A date I recognized, our anniversary trip. But the folder wasn't photos from that trip. It was screenshots, receipts, maps, call logs. All from dates she had told me she was working late, but none of them were hers. They were his. Every screenshot showed his location, his messages. His timing, not evidence of cheating, evidence of following him, tracking him, watching his movements. My breath caught in my chest. This wasn't an affair. This was an obsession, not romantic, not emotional, something darker. Something she didn't want me, or him, to know. The front door handle rattled. She was home early. Too early. I snapped the phone shut and stepped back as the door creaked open. She walked in slowly, her eyes landing on me immediately, not with suspicion, but with studying, measuring, and in her voice low, soft calm, she asked a question she had never asked before. "Did you miss me?" But the way she said it made my skin crawl. Because it wasn't affection, it was a test. A test I didn't know how to answer. That night, sleep didn't come for either of us. She lay beside me, perfectly still, like someone performing the idea of sleep rather than falling into it. Her breathing was too even, too measured. Every inhale matched the last. Every exhale landed exactly on a rhythm that felt practiced, like she wanted me to believe she was calm. But calm wasn't the word, it was control. I stared at the ceiling long enough that the shadows began to warp into shapes, corners bending, edges shifting, the mind playing tricks because it didn't want to face the real ones. When I finally drifted off, it was the kind of sleep that feels like drowning, heavy, suffocating, and then I woke, not from a nightmare, but because the bed was empty. Again, I sat up sharply. No footsteps. No sound, just the faint glow leaking from the hallway. When I stepped outside our room, the air felt colder. Not physically, emotionally. Like walking into a space that wasn't mine anymore. She was sitting in the living room, in the dark, facing the window, not looking at anything, not moving, just sitting. Her phone was finally in her hand, unlocked, screen dim but visible from where I stood. I took a step closer. She didn't flinch. Another step. Nothing. Her posture was rigid, arms resting on her knees like she'd been sitting that way for hours. Only when I spoke did she react. "You okay?" Slowly, almost imperceptibly, her head turned toward me. Her expression was unreadable, not sad, not angry. Just empty in a way that made my stomach twist. "Do you trust me?" She asked quietly. A simple question. An innocent one, if spoken in daylight. But here, in the dark, it landed with the weight of a confession. "I want to," I said honestly. She blinked once. A slow blink, heavy, measured, like everything she did now. "Then why were you on my phone?" It wasn't accusatory. It wasn't emotional. It was curious, as though she were asking about a stranger's behavior, not mine. My heartbeat faltered. She knew. Not guessed, knew. I swallowed, but my mouth was dry. I saw the messages. It didn't feel right. She turned back to the window. "You weren't supposed to see those." The phrasing chilled me. Not because of what she said, but how she said it. Not distressed, not upset, but calm. Like discovering the truth was an inconvenience, not a crisis. "Who is he?" I managed. Her fingers tightened on the phone. The first real emotion I'd seen from her in days. "He's no one. Not anymore." The words echoed through the room like a dropped coin. She stood up slowly, her silhouette framed by the faint light from outside. And when she faced me fully, something in her expression shifted. Not a full change, but a crack, a tremor. Fear? Regret? Something else? I couldn't tell. "Come back to bed," she whispered. Not a request, not an invitation, a directive. I followed, not because I trusted her, but because the quiet truth was finally taking shape in my mind. I wasn't the one being deceived. He was, and I had stumbled into something I wasn't meant to understand. When she lay beside me, she took my hand gently, carefully, but her grip tightened just a little too long. Just enough to remind me I didn't know the woman sleeping next to me anymore. The next day, the air in the house felt charged, like the static before a storm. Every floorboard creaked like it was trying to warn me. Every shadow looked sharper than it should. She moved through the morning like nothing happened. Coffee, toast, hair pulled back neatly. Her usual routine, down to the timing. Except for one thing, she kept watching me, not suspicious. Not angry. Watching like she was gauging my temperature, waiting to see how hot the doubt inside me had gotten. I tried to act normal. Normal felt safer. But the silence between us had weight now, thick and dark, like smoke you can't see but still inhale. Finally, as she was putting on her shoes by the door, she said, "We need to talk, after work." The words froze me in place. Talk, not argue. Not explain. Talk. The last time she used that tone was before her father's funeral. A tone you use when truth is coming, whether you want it or not. She left without a kiss, without a look back. That was when I made a mistake, a necessary mistake. I followed her, not closely too, maybe 3 cars behind. I didn't want her to know. I just needed to understand. Her route was familiar, until it wasn't. She turned off the main road and headed toward the outskirts, toward the old commercial district where half the buildings were abandoned. She parked outside a small boarded-up storefront, sat in her car. Didn't get out. A few minutes later, another car arrived. Him, the man from the messages. He didn't get out either. They sat there in silence, engines running, windows up, just parked. The hairs on my arms rose. They weren't meeting. They weren't talking. They were watching something across the street. A house with peeling paint and a sagging porch. A man came out, carrying a toolbox. The moment he stepped onto the porch, both my wife and the stranger leaned forward in their cars. Not romantically. Not lovingly. Intently. Focused. My stomach turned as a realization settled over me. This wasn't cheating. This wasn't an affair. This was surveillance. A stackout. A secret I was never meant to walk into. My wife finally turned her car slightly, giving me a clear view of her face through the windshield. And for the first time I saw it. Not guilt. Not fear. Purpose. Determination. Something sharper. Something colder. When she drove away 20 minutes later, I didn't follow. I didn't move. I just sat there, mind racing, heart pounding. This wasn't about love, or betrayal, or drifting apart. It was something else entirely. Something she buried deep enough that she assumed I would never uncover it. But that night, when she walked through the front door and saw me waiting at the kitchen table, she didn't pretend anymore. She set her keys down slowly, met my eyes, and said the 3 words that changed everything. He hurt her. Her voice cracked, the first fracture I'd heard since this all began. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't a love triangle. This was a hunt. For a long moment, those 3 words hovered between us, thickening the air. He hurt her. Not he cheated. Not he lied. Not he loved me. No, what she said was darker, quieter, carved out of a place she'd kept locked long before I ever met her. She sat across from me slowly, like her body was moving on delay, the weight of the memories pulling at her limbs. Her hands trembled, barely, but enough for me to notice, as she folded them together on the table. "When I was 19, she began, I had a best friend, someone I trusted more than anyone, someone who knew everything about me." Her voice was soft, but it wasn't fragile. It was contained like a bomb. Her name was Tessa. She said the name like it physically hurt to bring it back into the world. We lived together in a cheap apartment near campus. We shared everything, clothes, food, secrets. We were practically sisters. She looked down at her hands. Then she started seeing him, a beat. The man you heard laughing outside my door. My blood ran cold. Back then, he was charming. Everyone liked him. Tessa fell hard. And for a while, I thought she was happy, until she wasn't. Her voice lowered. There were bruises, small at first. Explanations that didn't make sense. Excuses that kept changing. And the worst part? She started pulling away from everyone, including me. She swallowed. I tried to talk to her. I begged her to leave him. She wouldn't. She said he'd change, that he loved her, that it was her fault when he got angry. Her fingers tightened. One night, she called me, shaking, crying, whispering. She said he'd locked her in his apartment for 2 days. She said she was scared to go to the police because he knew where her parents lived. The lights above us hummed, the only sound breaking the heavy stillness. I drove to her. I got there as fast as I could, but by the time I did, she stopped. Her breath hitched, and the silence stretched so long I felt it press against my ribs. He was gone, she said finally. And she was a mess, terrified, barely speaking. I felt frozen in place. What happened to him? I asked quietly. He disappeared, she said. Left town, left the state, left everything. The police said without evidence they couldn't charge him. Nothing stuck. Her eyes lifted to mine, and they weren't empty anymore. They were burning. Tessa left too. She moved across the country, stopped answering calls. She wanted a clean slate. A life without shadows. I exhaled slowly. And you? You found him again. Her jaw clenched. I wasn't looking. I never looked. I didn't want to relive any of it. A shaky breath. But then a year ago, after a shift, I saw him at a grocery store. Just standing there like a memory walking around in daylight. The emotion in her voice was a quiet storm, enough to shake something inside me. I followed him. Just once, just to confirm it was him. But the moment I did, I became someone else. Someone who couldn't unsee. Someone who couldn't unknow. The cold truth began to solidify in my chest. So you've been watching him? She nodded slowly. He has a type, she said. Young women, alone, vulnerable. I've seen him bring them home. I've seen them leave crying. I've seen enough to know he hasn't changed a beat. And I couldn't tell you. Because once you know a truth like this, you can't pretend life is normal anymore. Her confession hung between us like a fragile branch, one crack away from snapping. Then who is the man in the car? I asked, her eyes darkened. Someone who has even more reason to hate him than I do. My skin prickled. And what are you planning to do? I whispered. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she leaned back, her hands falling into her lap, her voice barely audible. Nothing, she said. Not yet. The way she said it, the calm finality, sent a quiet chill down my spine. This wasn't a woman unraveling. This was a woman preparing, and for the first time since it all began, I realized the danger wasn't just outside. It was sitting right across from me. Her confession still echoed through my chest, but before I could unpack any of it, she stood and walked toward the hallway. Not quickly, not dramatically, but with a purpose that made the air thicken behind her. She stopped at the bottom drawer of her desk, unlocked it with a small key she wore around her neck, and pulled something out. A folder, thick, overstuffed, edges worn from being opened too many times. She dropped it on the table between us, and the sound it made, a dull, heavy thud, felt like a verdict. I wasn't the only one watching him, she said. I opened the folder slowly. Inside were photographs, printed screenshots, dates, times, locations, a paper trail that shouldn't have existed, not outside a detective's office. My pulse quickened. The photos were taken from far distances, from behind buildings, through windshields. All of them showed the same man, the one I'd seen outside her door, the one from the messages, but he wasn't with her. He was with someone else. Different angles, different days, different states, tracking, following, obsessing. He's been on this for 3 years, she said. Longer than me. I looked up at her confused. Who is he? She exhaled. Her brother. The words hit harder than I expected. Tessa's brother? I asked. She nodded. His name is Noah. He was overseas when everything happened. By the time he came back, Tessa was gone, and the man responsible vanished. Her voice softened. And he blamed himself. He thinks if he'd been here, he could have protected her. She walked around the table and sat down again, not across from me this time, but beside me, as if the distance between us had become its own kind of problem. Noah spent years trying to find him, she continued. Looking through public records, online forums, old addresses. He didn't even know if the guy was alive. But last year, he found him the same night I did. My breath caught. Their paths crossed by accident? Not exactly, she said. He found him first, tracked him here. I only saw the man because Noah had been shadowing him for weeks. A chilling realization settled over me. So the two of you teamed up, she hesitated. Not at first. Noah wanted to handle it alone. He still does, but he needed help, someone local. Someone who knew the guy's habits before he learned to hide them. I swallowed. And that someone was you. She didn't nod, she didn't speak. But the silence answered for her. I sifted through more pages, receipts, screenshots of social media posts, addresses, surveillance notes. All handwritten in two distinct scripts, hers and Noah's. You two weren't cheating, I whispered, feeling both foolish and relieved. She looked almost offended by the thought. No, that man is the last person I would ever open my heart to. The only thing we share is a scar we didn't choose. I closed the folder carefully. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. She sat back, her eyes drifting to the hallway, to our bedroom. Because once you know something like this, she said, you can't unknow it. And I didn't want to pull you into something that could change everything. A pause. And because I knew how it would look, the secrecy, the silence, the messages. You were meant to misunderstand. You were meant to stay away. The words stung more than I expected. So you pushed me out to keep me safe, I said. Her eyes finally met mine, tired, raw, honest. I pushed you out so you'd never be in the line of fire. She took a breath. But once you listened outside my door, it was already too late. I felt something cold and heavy settle in my stomach. What do you mean? Her voice dropped. He saw your car. My heart stopped. Who? She didn't blink. The man we've been watching. He saw your car parked outside my building. The room went silent, completely silent. You weren't supposed to be there, she whispered. He thinks you're part of this now. A slow dread crawled up the back of my neck. What does that mean? I asked, barely breathing. She stared at me with an expression that made my pulse stutter. It means, she said quietly, we're out of time. The words hung between us like smoke, thick and suffocating. We're out of time. Not a warning, not an exaggeration. A simple fact, delivered with the kind of calm that only appears when fear has burned itself into clarity. I felt my heartbeat in my fingertips. What does that mean? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood and walked to the living room window, pulling the curtain back just an inch. Just enough to see the street without being seen. He's been careful for years, she said quietly. Changing jobs, apartments, routines. But he's always been cautious, paranoid, suspicious of everyone. It's how he's survived. A cold knot formed in my stomach. And now he thinks I'm involved. She nodded. When you were at my door, he must have heard you. Maybe he saw your shadow through the curtains. Maybe he stepped outside after you left. Her voice grew smaller. Maybe he followed you to your car. My breath hitched. I didn't see anyone. That's the problem, she whispered. You're not supposed to. She stepped back from the window, letting the curtain fall into place. For 15 months, Noah and I watched him. Tracked him, waited for him to slip. She closed her eyes. And for 15 months, he never noticed. Her shoulders dropped, a shiver running through her. But the second you appeared, he changed his entire routine. I tried to steady my voice. What exactly did he change? She walked to the table and opened another folder, thinner, but more unsettling. Inside were notes. Tuesday. Left house twice, circled neighborhood, no pattern Wednesday. Sat in car for 20 minutes before driving. No destination. Just circling. Thursday, followed by an unk. Vehicle, unconfirmed Friday. Looked directly at Noah's car. First time in months Saturday. Didn't leave house at all. My pulse quickened. You think he knows you're watching him? She shook her head. No, he thinks you are. That landed like a punch to the ribs. But why me? She met my eyes, steady, unblinking. Because you're the variable. The new piece on the board. The one he didn't expect. I swallowed hard. What does Noah say? He's furious, she said. Not at you, at me. He thinks I've compromised the entire plan by letting someone get close. And did you? I asked. Her gaze flickered again, that tiny tremor of emotion she kept trying to hide. I didn't mean to, she whispered. But yes, I did. My throat tightened, but the fear pushing at my chest drowned out every other feeling. What happens now? I asked. She moved toward me, slowly, cautiously, like she was approaching a wounded animal, or maybe the wounded thing was her. Noah wants to accelerate everything, she said. He thinks we should confront him before he makes the first move. Confront? I repeated, pulse thudding. She nodded. But that's not what I want. The way she said it made the air shift. What do you want? I asked. Her breath trembled, the first real crack in her composure. I want to protect you, she said. I never wanted you involved in this. I never wanted you to know what happened to Tessa. I thought keeping you in the dark meant keeping you safe. She stepped closer. But you know now, and he knows you exist, and that changes everything. I forced myself to stay calm, though my heart hammered against my ribs. Has he tried to contact you? I asked. No, she said. And that's the worst sign of all. A chill ran through me. Why? She took a step back, her voice low, controlled but shaking at the edges. Because when men like him go quiet, they're not avoiding you. She swallowed hard. They're planning. The room felt smaller. The air felt thinner. Like danger was pressing in from all sides. What are we supposed to do? I asked. She looked toward the front door, locked, bolted, barricaded from the inside. Then she looked at her phone, then back at me. We wait, she said. For what? Her answer was barely a whisper. For him to make his move. The night the truth came out was the quietest night of all, the kind of quiet that feels staged, rehearsed, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for one last secret to land. The lights in the hallway flickered again, but this time, they didn't go off. They stayed dim, low, almost candle orange. It felt intentional. I stepped toward the center of the living room, the same place where the footsteps had echoed on the first night, where the phone turned itself on, where the house seemed to study me like a stranger trespassing on its grief. My pulse wasn't racing anymore. It was steady, like I already knew what I was about to hear. Behind me, the door creaked open. Dad's silhouette filled the doorway, thinner than he used to be, shoulders slumped forward, like the weight he'd carried for years had finally bent him out of shape. You weren't supposed to find the attic, he said quietly. I didn't turn around. Then why leave it unlocked? He let out a breath that cracked in the middle. I didn't leave it unlocked. She did. A cold wave crawled up my spine. Before I could speak, Dad walked further into the room, stopping where the shadows swallowed half his face. You think the house was trying to scare you? He whispered. No. It was trying to warn you. Every hair on my arms lifted. The clock on the wall clicked once, sharply, like a camera shutter. Dad flinched. She talked to me last night, he said. I didn't want to believe it, but she did. Same voice. Same way she used to wake me up when she needed something in the middle of the night. My stomach twisted. You're saying Mom was not done with us, he finished. The temperature dropped so suddenly, it felt like standing in an open freezer. My breath fogged the air. Then, footsteps, slow, heavy, coming from the hallway. Dad grabbed my arm. No matter what you see, he whispered, don't talk to her. The footsteps stopped just behind the corner. Silence. Too complete. Too deliberate. Then a voice, soft, almost sweet, drifted through the hallway. Why didn't you tell him the truth? Dad froze. My heart turned to stone. She wasn't talking to me. She was talking to him. I took a step back, but the lights hummed louder, vibrating, closing us in. Dad swallowed hard. "You made me promise," he said to the darkness. "You said he wasn't ready," the voice sighed. It was a warm sound, gentle, nostalgic, but wrong. Wrong in a way that wrapped around your ribs and squeezed. He deserved to know. Why I never left the house. I felt something brush past me, a breeze, a hand, a memory. I couldn't tell. Dad's eyes watered. "You said you were at peace." "No," the voice said softly. "I said I was waiting, and then something stepped into the faint glow coming from the living room lamp, not fully visible, not fully human. A shape made of suggestion, a silhouette of someone I used to know so well I could recognize her by breath alone. My mother. Her face was half shadow, half light, flickering like an old tape trying to stay alive. She lifted her hand, slow, graceful, familiar, and pointed at the attic door behind us. "Go back," she whispered. "There's something he didn't show you." Dad's knees buckled. I grabbed him before he fell, but his eyes were locked on her, wide, flooded with guilt, dread, longing. "I'm sorry," he choked. I couldn't tell him that part. The figure flickered once, twice, like a dying bulb. "Tell him," she said. "Or I will." And then she vanished. A single photograph drifted down from the ceiling, landing at my feet. It was old, yellowed, edges curled. But the faces were unmistakable. Dad, Mom, and me, maybe 6 or 7. Except the picture was wrong. Mom's eyes were crossed out with thick black ink. And behind us, barely visible, someone else stood in the doorway of our old home, watching, waiting. Dad closed his eyes, and in that moment, I knew the real story wasn't about the lights or the footsteps or the phone or the house. It was about her and him. And the one truth they had both buried so deep that even death couldn't keep it quiet. "Dad," I whispered, "what did you do?" He didn't answer. The house did. A loud crack echoed above us, the attic door swinging open on its own. Everything I thought I knew about that week and about my family was about to shatter. And I stepped toward the stairs, knowing that whatever waited up there was the reason my mother never left. If you made it this far, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I have carefully selected a story for you to watch next that I am sure you would love. I will see you in the next story.